Today, we're doing something a little different. We are cracking open a set of sources that get right to the cold, hard truths of power and influence.
Yeah, we're skipping the usual motivational stuff and going straight to the source. The lessons here are drawn directly from history's most, let's say, dramatic moments. Royal courts, major conflicts.
And our mission for you today is pretty simple. We want to distill the most crucial lessons about, navigating hierarchies, managing your reputation, and really self-preservation.
Exactly. It's a shortcut. And what you see in these sources again and again is that the patterns in human behavior, they just haven't changed.
That's what's so compelling, isn't it? Whether you're dealing with a boss or a competitor, the core drivers, insecurity, ambition, that need for control, they're timeless.
So we're going to dig into some specific historical examples, some successes, and some spectacular failures to see how perception is really built and how power actually works.
Okay, let's start with what might be the biggest challenge for anyone, dealing with the people above you. Our sources call this a deadly but common misperception. Why is showing off your talent so risky?
Because it slides directly in the face of the first most important rule, never outshine the master.
Right.
The person in charge, whether it's a king or a CEO, they need to feel secure. They need to feel like the most brilliant person in the room. When you make them feel insecure, well, you're inviting disaster.
And the classic example of this is Nicolas Fouquet, right? Louis XIV's finance minister.
The ultimate example. Fouquet was brilliant, no question, indispensable, wealthy, but he made one massive error in judgment.
He threw a party.
He threw the party. He sensed he was maybe falling out of favor, so he decides to host this unbelievable spectacle at his chateau to honor the king.
And we're talking about a level of extravagance that's just hard to imagine. Molière wrote a play for it. The gardens were a marvel.
It was probably the most magnificent party the world had ever seen. And that, right there, was the problem. He wasn't just showing off his wealth.
What was he doing?
He was trying to define magnificence itself. He showed that he, a mere subject, could put on a show more spectacular than anything the king himself had ever imagined.
So he didn't look like a loyal servant anymore.
He looked like a rival, someone with a dangerous amount of independent power and, maybe more importantly, imagination. Louis XIV felt humiliated, insecure.
And he had Fouquet arrested not long after.
Almost immediately. And he replaced him with this notoriously bland Colbert. Colbert was competent, sure, but he was no threat to the king's ego. He was happy to just serve, not shine.
So the lesson is almost to actively downplay your own brilliance. But is there a way to still use your talents to get ahead without making the boss jealous?
Yes, and this is where Galileo comes in. His strategy was the complete opposite of Fouquet's.
How so?
Well, Galileo was a genius, but he was always struggling for money, for patronage. His turning point came in 1610 when he discovered the 4 moons of Jupiter.
A massive scientific breakthrough.
Huge, but instead of naming them after himself, he immediately dedicated the discovery to the Medicis, the ruling family of Florence. He even tied the 4 moons to Cosimo II and his 3 brothers.
He essentially carved their family symbol into the heavens.
He did. He turned his scientific genius into a PR victory for his patrons. He made the master shine. And the result?
He got that court position he always wanted.
A full salary, lifelong position. It ended his insecurity. He understood that you give the glory to the patron, and the patron gives you the gold.
That's such a crucial distinction. Your success has to look like it flows from the master's support, not in spite of it.
That's the core psychological play.
Okay, so that's managing up. But what if you're the one doing the work and you need the credit? This brings us to Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit.
And for this, you have to look at the tragedy of Nikola Tesla.
Oh, this is a painful one. A pure genius, hired by Thomas Edison. He's working, 18-hour days improving Edison's dynamos.
Yeah. Nonstop. And Edison promises him $50,000, which was an astronomical amount of money back then.
And Tesla delivers. He makes these huge improvements, and Edison just laughs it off.
Calls it American humor, offers him a tiny raise. Tesla quits, of course, and goes on to invent the AC system that, powers our world today.
But for the longest time, everyone thought of Edison as the great inventor. His name was everywhere, not Tesla's. Why?
Because Tesla cared about the invention. Edison cared about the brand. He was a master publicist, a ruthless businessman who knew how to hire or borrow talent.
Hey, wait.
And he made sure his name was on the final product. Tesla had the genius, but Edison had the patents and the headlines. Tesla just got exhausted, while Edison built an empire on other people's labor.
So the takeaway for you, the listener, is that the credit for something is often more important than the thing itself. You have to fight for your name on the work.
It's a harsh lesson, but a vital one. You can't do it all yourself and expect to rise.
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit to the art of strategic misdirection. Real power, it seems, is often about being intentionally ambiguous. Law 3. Conceal your intentions.
The goal here is to keep people completely off balance, and there's no better master of this than Otto von Bismarck.
The German statesman. So what was his move?
Well, back in 1850, Prussia was hot for a war with Austria. Everyone wanted it, and Bismarck secretly wanted it too, but he knew they weren't ready.
So he couldn't just come out and say, let's prepare for war.
No, that would have been a disaster. So
Yeah.
he did the opposite. He gave this big public speech praising Austria and talking about how insane a war would be.
Which must have confused everyone.
His allies thought he was a traitor, but the one person he needed to convince was the king, who was a pacifist. The king loved the speech, thought Bismarck was a man of peace, and made him a cabinet minister.
And from that position of power.
He got the time he needed to build up the army, and a few years later, he led Prussia into the very war he'd argued against, crushed Austria, and unified Germany. The peace speech was a perfect decoy.
The sources also mention something called a smokescreen, used by the con artist, the Yellow Kid. How is that different from a decoy?
It's a great question. A decoy, like Bismarck's, is a plausible but false skull. You make them think you want A when you really want B.
Okay.
A smokescreen is different. It's about overwhelming the target with noise and complexity to hide a simple lie. The Yellow Kid was running a small-time scam on a millionaire, Sam Giesel.
He wanted $35,000.
Right. But he knew Giesel was suspicious, so he invented this massive, elaborate story about a fake diamond mine sale. Giesel got so obsessed with the millions he could make, the logistics, the adventure.
That he completely missed the flaws in the actual scam happening right in front of him.
Exactly. The smokescreen was so big and shiny, he didn't notice that the prize fighter involved in the con had a beer belly and gray hair. His mind was somewhere else entirely.
So he was so distracted by the big lie that he missed the small truth.
And it worked perfectly. In the end, he was so terrified of being implicated in a fake murder that he ran, leaving the money behind without a second thought.
So strategic invisibility is power. But you can't be invisible all the time. This brings us to the other side of the coin. Law 6, court attention at all cost.
And the master of this was P.T. Barnum. His whole philosophy was that any kind of attention, even negative attention, is better than being ignored.
He'd actually pay people to write bad reviews of his own shows, right?
He did. Just to keep his name in the papers. He understood that controversy creates buzz. He even hired terrible musicians to play on the balcony of his museum.
For the Free Music for the Millions concert.
Yeah, the music was so awful that people would pay the admission fee just to go inside the museum and get away from the noise. It was genius.
That's so aggressive, but then you have a more subtle approach, like the mystery created by Mata Hari.
Right. Mata Hari was originally just Margaret Zell from Holland. She had no real talent as a dancer, no Eastern heritage at all.
But she built this entire persona.
A complete fabrication. She was a Javanese princess who performed sacred Hindu dances. It was all atmosphere and mystery. She constantly changed her backstory, used veils, exotic costumes.
She made herself into a fantasy.
She understood that if you are ordinary, you have to create an aura of the extraordinary. She wasn't more talented than anyone else in Paris, but her story, her mystery, made her a legend.
It's amazing how those two strategies, Bismarck's blandness, hiding ambition, and Mata Hari's sensationalism, hiding ordinariness, are total opposites, but they achieve the same goal.
Control. They both control their public perception completely.
Let's move to the inner circle. This feels crucial. Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. This sounds incredibly cynical.
It sounds cynical, but the historical record is, frankly, brutal on this point. Look at the Byzantine Emperor Michael III.
He was inexperienced, needed someone he could trust.
That he chose his best friend, Basilius, a former stable boy who had once saved his life. He thought, this man owes me everything. He'll be loyal forever.
A fatal mistake.
The most fatal. He showered Basilius with power and riches. But once Basilius got a taste of real power, he became greedy, ambitious. He first convinced Michael to murder his own uncle to clear a path for himself.
Wow.
And then, when the emperor, who was a bit of a spendthrift, asked Basilius to repay some money, Basilius just refused, openly. Michael suddenly realized his loyal friend was now more powerful than he was.
And it didn't end well for Michael.
A few weeks later, Basilius had him stabbed to death and took the throne. The lesson is that gratitude is a very weak foundation for power. Friends become envious. An enemy you hire, on the other hand, has everything to prove.
That is a truly sobering story. It suggests that deep friendship and high power just don't mix.
The sources suggest they are fundamentally incompatible. The emotional bonds of friendship can't survive the cold calculus of power.
Okay, let's turn to our final law, and it's a warning. Law 47. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, you have to know when to stop.
This is probably the most dangerous moment for anyone, the intoxication of success. Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Persian Empire, was a master strategist.
Until he wasn't.
Right. After he achieved his main goal, conquering the Lydians, he just kept going. His ambition became an emotion, not a strategy. He decided to invade Demasagete, a tribe ruled by Queen Tomyris.
Even though she warned him not to, he was overreaching.
Completely. Driven by pure momentum and pride, he captured her son using a trick which enraged her and led to a brutal war.
And the consequence for his hubris.
His army was crushed. Tomyris found his body on the battlefield, cut off his head, and plunged it into a wineskin full of blood, shouting, "You have your fill of blood."
That is graphic, a very literal lesson.
It is, and the interpretation is so important. The moment you go past your original goal, you start creating new enemies, you exhaust your resources, and you make yourself a target. Wisdom is knowing when to consolidate your victory, not push for more.
What a journey. So we have Galileo managing the master, Tesla feeling to own his own credit, Bismarck with the decoy, Mata Hari with the performance.
Basilius showing the danger of friendship, and Cyrus showing the danger of victory itself.
It all confirms that these psychological drivers, envy, ambition, insecurity, they are constant. Understanding these patterns is like having a map to the world we live in now.
It really is. The titles have changed, but the game is the same.
And if there's one final thought to leave you with, it'd have to be about appearance versus reality. All these powerful figures were masters of performance. They knew that your reputation isn't who you are, it's a character you play. So the provocative question for you is this: what costume are you choosing to wear today? Are you the blank Colbert, the magnificent Fouquet, the mysterious Mata Hari, and is that costume actually serving your real long-term goals?
That's a question worth spending some time on.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.